Cleopatra VII, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, has captivated historians, writers, and the public for centuries. Her life and reign represent a unique confluence of power, intellect, and charisma that continues to fascinate the world. Cleopatra's story is not merely one of personal ambition and romance, but also a tale of survival, strategy, and the struggle to preserve her kingdom amidst the vast forces of Rome's expanding empire. She remains an emblem of intrigue, celebrated not only for her beauty, as often emphasized, but also for her sharp mind, eloquence, and unyielding determination. Born into a dynasty of Greek origin, Cleopatra ruled during a period of significant political and cultural upheaval. The Ptolemaic dynasty, founded by one of Alexander the Great's generals, had governed Egypt for nearly 3 centuries by the time Cleopatra came to power. Despite its Hellenistic roots, the dynasty embraced many aspects of Egyptian culture, a duality that Cleopatra exemplified more than any of her predecessors. Fluent in multiple languages, including Egyptian, a skill rare among her family, Cleopatra positioned herself as a true ruler of her people, forging an image that merged Greek sophistication with Egyptian tradition. Cleopatra's reign unfolded against the backdrop of Rome's ascendancy as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. The Roman Republic, beset by internal strife and power struggles, cast its shadow over Egypt's independence. Cleopatra's political acumen was tested early and often, as she navigated the precarious balance of maintaining her nation's sovereignty while managing alliances with key Roman figures. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony were not mere romantic entanglements, but calculated efforts to secure Egypt's place in a rapidly changing world. What makes Cleopatra particularly remarkable is her agency in an era when women were rarely permitted to wield significant power. She was a ruler who defied the norms of her time, stepping confidently into the male-dominated spheres of politics and warfare. Cleopatra's ability to command armies, negotiate alliances, and govern effectively set her apart as one of history's most formidable leaders. She ruled not as a passive figurehead, but as a sovereign who actively shaped the destiny of her kingdom. Her life has often been reduced to the melodrama of her romances, overshadowing her achievements and the complexities of her reign. This simplification does a disservice to Cleopatra's legacy. She was not merely the lover of Caesar or Antony. She was a monarch whose decisions influenced the course of history. Her relationships with these men were strategic as much as they were personal, underscoring her ability to leverage her intellect and charm in the service of her political aims. Despite her tragic end, Cleopatra's story is one of resilience and ambition. She inherited a kingdom on the brink of collapse and managed to delay its absorption into the Roman Empire for nearly 2 decades. Through her leadership, Egypt remained a cultural and economic powerhouse, with Alexandria as a beacon of learning and innovation. Cleopatra's reign marked the final chapter of ancient Egypt's storied independence before it became a province of Rome. Cleopatra's legacy is further complicated by the biases of her Roman adversaries, whose accounts form much of the historical record. Writers like Plutarch and Dio Cassius, influenced by Roman propaganda, painted her as a manipulative seductress, downplaying her intelligence and administrative prowess. These depictions have shaped the popular image of Cleopatra, often reducing her to a figure defined by her relationships with powerful men rather than her own accomplishments. In modern times, Cleopatra has been reclaimed as a feminist icon and a symbol of cultural fusion. Her ability to thrive in a multicultural environment, embracing both her Macedonian heritage and Egyptian identity, resonates in an increasingly interconnected world. She represents the potential for bridging divides and forging new paths, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Ultimately, Cleopatra's enduring appeal lies in her complexity. She was a ruler, a diplomat, a scholar, and a woman of extraordinary determination. Her life serves as a reminder that history is not only shaped by great empires and powerful men, but also by individuals who dare to defy expectations and chart their own course. Cleopatra's story invites us to look beyond the myths and explore the rich tapestry of her life, a narrative that continues to inspire and challenge our understanding of power and legacy. Cleopatra's life and reign were deeply intertwined with the legacy of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family that traced its roots to the conquests of Alexander the Great. The Ptolemies, a Macedonian Greek dynasty, had ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years by the time Cleopatra was born. Their reign represented a blend of Greek and Egyptian traditions, creating a hybrid culture that flourished in the ancient world. To understand Cleopatra's rise to power and her unique approach to leadership, it is essential to explore the history and context of her family's rule, as well as her formative years. The Ptolemaic dynasty was established by Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander's trusted generals, after the partitioning of Alexander's empire following his death in 323 BCE. Ptolemy seized Egypt and declared himself pharaoh, founding a dynasty that would control one of the ancient world's wealthiest and most strategically significant regions. The Ptolemies adopted many of the traditions of their Egyptian subjects, including the use of the title pharaoh and the integration of Egyptian religious practices. However, they also maintained their Hellenistic heritage, building the famed city of Alexandria as a center of Greek learning and culture. By Cleopatra's time, the Ptolemaic dynasty was in decline. Centuries of internal strife, dynastic feuds, and external pressures had weakened its grip on Egypt. Successive rulers faced challenges from Rome, which was rapidly expanding its influence in the eastern Mediterranean. The Ptolemies had become heavily dependent on Roman support to maintain their rule, often serving as client kings to the Republic. This precarious balance between independence and subjugation would shape Cleopatra's strategies as she sought to protect her kingdom. Cleopatra was born in 69 BCE, the daughter of Ptolemy XII Elites, a ruler whose reign was marked by political instability and financial woes. Known as the flute player, Ptolemy XII was unpopular with his subjects and heavily reliant on Roman backing. His dependence on Roman loans and military aid deepened Egypt's vulnerability to external interference. Cleopatra's mother is less definitively identified in historical records, but it is widely believed she was of Macedonian descent, like the rest of the Ptolemaic royal family. As a child of the Ptolemaic court, Cleopatra grew up in an environment of opulence and danger. The royal family was notorious for its internal rivalries, with siblings often turning against one another in bids for power. This atmosphere of intrigue and betrayal likely influenced Cleopatra's political acumen and survival instincts. Despite the challenges, Cleopatra received an exceptional education, befitting her royal status. Tutored by the finest scholars in Alexandria, she studied subjects ranging from philosophy and rhetoric to astronomy and medicine. One of Cleopatra's most remarkable traits was her linguistic ability. Ancient sources suggest she was fluent in as many as 9 languages, including Greek, Egyptian, Aramaic, and Latin. This linguistic prowess not only set her apart from her predecessors, who often relied on translators, but also enabled her to communicate directly with her diverse subjects and foreign allies. Her mastery of the Egyptian language, in particular, endeared her to the native population and reinforced her image as a legitimate pharaoh. Cleopatra's early exposure to the complexities of governance also prepared her for the challenges she would face as ruler. During her father's exile in Rome, she witnessed firsthand the dynamics of Roman politics and the mechanisms of power that underpinned the Republic. This experience likely informed her later interactions with powerful Roman figures such as Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Cleopatra understood that Egypt's survival depended on navigating the turbulent waters of Roman ambition and rivalry. When Cleopatra ascended to the throne in 51 BCE, she was only 18 years old. She initially co-ruled with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, as was customary in the Ptolemaic dynasty. However, this arrangement quickly devolved into conflict, fueled by court factions and competing ambitions. Cleopatra's early reign was marked by a struggle for control, forcing her to flee Alexandria temporarily before returning to power with the aid of Julius Caesar. These events underscored the fragility of her position and the relentless challenges she faced as a young queen. Despite the difficulties of her early years, Cleopatra's intelligence and determination allowed her to rise above the turmoil. She displayed a remarkable ability to adapt to changing circumstances, forging alliances and taking bold actions to secure her rule. Her early life experiences instilled in her a resilience and strategic mindset that would define her reign. These qualities were essential as she sought to stabilize her kingdom and assert her authority in a male-dominated world. Cleopatra's lineage and upbringing were instrumental in shaping her identity as a ruler. As the last descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty, she bore the weight of a centuries-old legacy while navigating the unprecedented challenges of her era. Her unique blend of Greek and Egyptian influences, coupled with her intellectual and political gifts, positioned her as a leader unlike any other in history. Cleopatra's early life set the stage for the extraordinary story of her reign, a tale of ambition, strategy, and resilience that continues to inspire and captivate. Cleopatra's rise to power was neither smooth nor assured. When she ascended to the throne in 51 BCE, at the age of 18, Egypt was a nation rife with internal discord and external threats. As a young queen, she faced formidable obstacles: political rivalries within her own family, a precarious economy, and the looming shadow of Rome's growing dominance in the Mediterranean. Her ability to navigate these challenges not only secured her position as Egypt's ruler, but also revealed the sharp intellect and strategic thinking that would define her reign. Upon the death of her father, Ptolemy XII Elites, Cleopatra was named ruler alongside her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. This arrangement was in accordance with the Ptolemaic tradition of sibling co-regency, but it was far from harmonious. Almost immediately, tensions arose between Cleopatra and the powerful court factions backing her brother. These factions sought to undermine Cleopatra's authority, viewing her as a threat to their influence over the young king. Cleopatra's initial reign was marked by a delicate balancing act as she attempted to assert her authority without alienating key figures in the royal court. Cleopatra's early rule coincided with a period of economic instability in Egypt. Years of mismanagement and heavy reliance on Roman loans during her father's reign had left the kingdom deeply indebted. The Nile's unpredictable flooding patterns exacerbated the situation, leading to food shortages and social unrest. Cleopatra recognized the need to address these challenges head-on. She implemented policies aimed at stabilizing the economy, including measures to regulate grain distribution and strengthen Egypt's agricultural base. These actions, while necessary, did little to placate her political opponents. By 48 BCE, Cleopatra found herself embroiled in a full-scale power struggle with her brother. The conflict escalated to the point where Cleopatra was forced to flee Alexandria, seeking refuge in the eastern deserts. Her temporary exile was a pivotal moment in her life, as it underscored the precariousness of her position and the lengths to which she would go to reclaim her throne. It was during this period that Cleopatra began to strategize how to turn her misfortune into an opportunity. The turning point came with the arrival of Julius Caesar in Alexandria. The Roman general had pursued his rival Pompey to Egypt after the outbreak of the Roman Civil War. Cleopatra saw in Caesar an opportunity to regain her power and secure Egypt's independence from Roman domination. In a calculated move, she famously had herself smuggled into Caesar's quarters, reportedly rolled inside a carpet or a sack of linens. This bold act not only captured Caesar's attention, but also demonstrated Cleopatra's willingness to take risks to achieve her goals. Cleopatra's alliance with Caesar was both political and personal. She persuaded him to support her claim to the throne, presenting herself as a capable and loyal ally to Rome. With Caesar's backing, Cleopatra returned to Alexandria and decisively defeated her brother's forces in the Alexandrian War. This victory solidified her position as the sole ruler of Egypt, albeit under the watchful eye of Rome. It also marked the beginning of a partnership that would significantly influence the course of her reign. Cleopatra's return to power did not mean an end to her challenges. Her relationship with Caesar, while beneficial, also made her vulnerable to criticism and suspicion. Many in Egypt and Rome viewed her as a manipulative foreign queen using her charm to influence Roman politics. Cleopatra, however, skillfully used her position to strengthen Egypt's ties to Rome, securing much-needed stability for her kingdom during a tumultuous period. Cleopatra's alliance with Caesar had a profound impact on her image as a ruler. She positioned herself not only as a queen, but as a symbol of unity between Egypt and Rome. Her ability to navigate the complex dynamics of this relationship demonstrated her political acumen and adaptability. Cleopatra's charm, intellect, and determination allowed her to win the loyalty of her subjects and the respect of her allies, ensuring her place as a formidable leader in the ancient world. Despite her successes, Cleopatra's reliance on Roman support was a double-edged sword. While it provided her with the means to maintain her power, it also tied Egypt's fate to the unpredictable currents of Roman politics. Cleopatra was acutely aware of this reality and worked tirelessly to strengthen her kingdom from within. She focused on revitalizing Egypt's economy, promoting cultural achievements, and projecting an image of stability and prosperity. Cleopatra's ascension to the throne was a testament to her resilience and strategic brilliance. She overcame immense challenges, including political betrayal, economic hardship, and military conflict, to establish herself as a powerful and independent ruler. Her early years as queen set the stage for the dramatic events that would define her reign and secure her place in history. Cleopatra's story during this period highlights her ability to navigate a complex web of alliances and rivalries, demonstrating that she was far more than a mere figurehead. She was a leader of extraordinary vision and determination. The relationship between Cleopatra and Julius Caesar stands as one of the most famous alliances in history. Their meeting in 48 BCE marked a pivotal moment, not only in Cleopatra's reign, but also in the broader geopolitical dynamics of the ancient world. The partnership was not merely a romantic connection. It was a calculated union of two ambitious leaders, each seeking to consolidate power and achieve their respective goals. Cleopatra sought to secure her throne and Egypt's autonomy, while Caesar aimed to solidify his dominance over Rome and expand his influence in the Mediterranean. Cleopatra's decision to align herself with Caesar was a bold and risky move. At the time, she was in a precarious position, having been ousted from Alexandria by her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, and the powerful court faction supporting him. The arrival of Julius Caesar in Alexandria, ostensibly in pursuit of his Roman rival Pompey, presented Cleopatra with a unique opportunity to reclaim her throne. Recognizing Caesar's strategic importance, Cleopatra devised a plan to meet him personally, bypassing the hostile forces of her brother. The dramatic nature of their first meeting has become the stuff of legend. According to ancient sources, Cleopatra was smuggled into Caesar's quarters, concealed in a sack of linens or a rolled-up carpet. This audacious act was not merely a display of courage, but also a demonstration of Cleopatra's resourcefulness and understanding of theatrical diplomacy. By presenting herself in such a dramatic fashion, Cleopatra captured Caesar's attention and established herself as a queen who was both daring and charismatic. Caesar, impressed by Cleopatra's intelligence and charm, agreed to support her claim to the throne. This alliance was cemented through both political collaboration and personal intimacy. Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar offered her a powerful ally capable of restoring her to power. For Caesar, aligning with Cleopatra provided access to Egypt's immense wealth and strategic location, essential for his broader ambitions in Rome and beyond. Their partnership was thus rooted in mutual benefit, each recognizing the value the other brought to their respective aspirations. With Caesar's military support, Cleopatra was able to defeat Ptolemy XIII and reclaim her position as the ruler of Egypt. The decisive moment came during the Alexandrian War, a conflict that saw Caesar's forces triumph over those of Cleopatra's brother. Ptolemy XIII met his end during the war, and Cleopatra was reinstated as queen, this time as co-ruler with another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, to maintain the semblance of traditional Ptolemaic governance. However, Cleopatra wielded the true power in this arrangement. Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar extended beyond the battlefield. During Caesar's stay in Egypt, the two shared a personal bond that resulted in the birth of their son, Ptolemy XV, commonly known as Caesarion. The child's birth was a significant event, symbolizing the union of Egyptian and Roman power. Cleopatra named Caesarion her co-ruler, further solidifying her dynasty's ties to Rome. For Cleopatra, Caesarion represented both a personal connection to Caesar and a political statement about Egypt's place in the Mediterranean world. In 46 BCE, Cleopatra traveled to Rome with Caesar, an unprecedented move for a foreign monarch. Her presence in the city created a sensation, as Romans were both fascinated and wary of her. Cleopatra resided in Caesar's villa outside Rome and participated in the social and political life of the city. Her visit underscored the close ties between Egypt and Rome, but it also fueled rumors and resentment among the Roman elite. Many viewed her as an outsider exerting undue influence over Caesar, a perception that would have lasting consequences. The relationship between Cleopatra and Caesar, while mutually beneficial, was not without its challenges. Roman society was deeply suspicious of foreign influence, and Cleopatra's prominence in Caesar's life drew criticism. Caesar's rivals used his association with Cleopatra to undermine his position, accusing him of being under the sway of a foreign queen. These tensions reflected broader anxieties in Rome about the Republic's growing entanglements with Eastern monarchies and the erosion of traditional Roman values. Cleopatra's time in Rome ended abruptly with Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE. The murder of Caesar was a devastating blow to Cleopatra's position, as it left her without a key ally and exposed her to the shifting dynamics of Roman power struggles. Recognizing the danger, Cleopatra quickly returned to Egypt, where she focused on consolidating her rule and ensuring her son's position as her successor. The death of Caesar marked a turning point in Cleopatra's life, forcing her to navigate a new and uncertain political landscape. Despite the challenges that followed Caesar's death, Cleopatra's alliance with him had lasting implications. It not only secured her position as queen, but also elevated Egypt's status as a key player in Mediterranean politics. Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar demonstrated her ability to form strategic alliances and leverage her charisma and intelligence to achieve her goals. This partnership laid the groundwork for her subsequent alliances and struggles, setting the stage for the next chapter of her extraordinary reign. After the death of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE, Cleopatra's position as ruler of Egypt became increasingly precarious. With Rome plunged into turmoil following Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra found herself navigating the complex and shifting alliances of the Roman Republic. It was during this time that she forged a relationship with Mark Antony, one of Caesar's most trusted generals and a prominent figure in the Second Triumvirate. This partnership would define the latter part of Cleopatra's reign, intertwining her fate with that of Rome and cementing her legacy as a figure of both romance and power. Cleopatra's relationship with Mark Antony began in 41 BCE, when the Roman leader summoned her to Tarsus in Cilicia to account for her loyalty to Rome. At the time, Antony was consolidating his power as part of the triumvirate alongside Octavian, the future Augustus, and Lepidus, but his position was far from secure. Cleopatra, recognizing the opportunity to strengthen her kingdom's ties with Rome, arrived in Tarsus in a manner designed to captivate Antony and assert her authority. Ancient sources describe her arrival as an extravagant display, with Cleopatra sailing on a gilded barge adorned with purple sails, embodying the goddess Aphrodite. Antony, much like Caesar before him, was struck by Cleopatra's charm, intelligence, and theatrical flair. Their initial meeting marked the beginning of a partnership that was as much political as it was personal. For Cleopatra, aligning herself with Antony offered a chance to secure Egypt's sovereignty and protect her son Caesarion's claim to power. For Antony, Cleopatra's wealth and resources were indispensable for his plans to dominate the eastern Mediterranean and challenge Octavian's influence. The alliance between Cleopatra and Antony quickly deepened into a romantic relationship, and the two spent the winter of 41 to 40 BC together in Alexandria. During this time, Cleopatra used her influence to solidify her position as Egypt's ruler and secure Antony's favor. The pair shared a vision of creating a powerful Eastern empire that could rival Rome. Cleopatra provided Antony with the financial and military support he needed, while Antony offered her protection and legitimacy in the eyes of Rome. Their union produced 3 children: the twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, born in 40 BCE, and a younger son, Ptolemy Philadelphus. These children symbolized the blending of Egyptian and Roman power and further reinforced Cleopatra's ambitions for a dynasty that could challenge the dominance of Octavian. The naming of the twins, invoking the sun, Helios, and moon, Selene, reflected Cleopatra's efforts to position her family as divinely ordained rulers. However, Cleopatra and Antony's relationship drew criticism and suspicion in Rome. Octavian, Antony's rival and Caesar's adopted heir, capitalized on their partnership to portray Antony as a traitor to Rome and a pawn of the foreign queen. Through propaganda, Octavian painted Cleopatra as a dangerous seductress who had bewitched Antony and threatened Roman values. This portrayal was effective in rallying support against Antony and Cleopatra, setting the stage for a confrontation that would determine the fate of Egypt and the Roman Republic. In 34 BCE, Antony and Cleopatra staged the infamous Donations of Alexandria, a lavish ceremony in which Antony distributed territories to Cleopatra and their children. Cleopatra was proclaimed Queen of Kings, and Caesarion was declared Caesar's rightful heir. These actions alarmed Octavian and the Roman Senate, as they appeared to challenge Rome's supremacy and the legitimacy of Octavian's claim to power. The donations heightened tensions between Antony and Octavian, making war inevitable. The conflict culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, a naval engagement off the western coast of Greece. Antony and Cleopatra's forces faced Octavian's fleet, commanded by the skilled General Agrippa. Despite their initial advantages, Antony and Cleopatra suffered a devastating defeat. Cleopatra's fleet retreated, and Antony's forces were left demoralized and scattered. The loss at Actium marked the beginning of the end for both Antony and Cleopatra. Following the battle, Antony and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria, where they attempted to rebuild their position. However, Octavian's forces pursued them relentlessly, and their allies deserted them one by one. In the face of inevitable defeat, Antony took his own life in 30 BCE after receiving false news that Cleopatra had died. Cleopatra, determined to avoid capture and humiliation in Rome, followed suit shortly afterward, reportedly by allowing herself to be bitten by an asp. The partnership between Cleopatra and Antony was one of history's most dramatic and consequential alliances. It represented a merging of ambition, love, and political strategy that profoundly shaped the ancient world. Together, they envisioned an empire that could rival Rome, but their dreams ultimately succumbed to the relentless power of Octavian. Despite their tragic end, Cleopatra and Antony's relationship left an indelible mark on history, symbolizing the clash of East and West and the enduring allure of power and passion. The Battle of Actium, fought on September 2nd, 31 BC, was a decisive confrontation that sealed the fate of Cleopatra, Mark Antony, and the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt. This naval engagement between the forces of Antony and Cleopatra on one side and Octavian, the future Augustus, on the other, marked the culmination of years of political rivalry and military tension. The battle not only determined the balance of power in the Roman world, but also marked the end of an era for Egypt and the broader Mediterranean. By the time of Actium, the alliance between Antony and Cleopatra had reached its zenith and begun to decline. Their Donations of Alexandria ceremony in 34 BC, which proclaimed Cleopatra and her children as rulers of vast territories, alarmed Octavian and many in Rome. Octavian used the event as propaganda, portraying Antony as a man who had abandoned Roman values in favor of a foreign queen. This narrative, combined with Octavian's effective political maneuvering, allowed him to position himself as the defender of Roman traditions and the Republic, despite his own ambitions for autocratic power. The propaganda war was only the prelude to a larger conflict. By 32 BC, Octavian had secured the loyalty of the Roman Senate and declared war, not on Antony directly, but on Cleopatra. This strategic framing allowed Octavian to rally support by presenting the conflict as a defense of Rome against an exotic and dangerous Eastern threat. Antony, tied to Cleopatra both politically and emotionally, was effectively forced into the same camp as Egypt, further isolating him from his Roman base. The opposing forces met at Actium, a promontory on the western coast of Greece. Octavian's fleet, commanded by the brilliant General Agrippa, was well-disciplined and strategically positioned. Antony and Cleopatra's forces, though larger in number, were plagued by logistical challenges, including a lack of supplies and wavering loyalty among their ranks. Cleopatra's fleet, equipped with massive, heavily armed ships, was a formidable presence, but lacked the maneuverability and cohesion of Octavian's navy. As the battle began, it quickly became evident that Octavian's forces held the upper hand. Agrippa's strategic use of smaller, more agile ships allowed him to outmaneuver Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. The engagement turned into a chaotic struggle, with Antony's forces increasingly unable to maintain formation or counter Agrippa's tactics. Cleopatra, who had positioned her fleet at the rear of the formation, watched the unfolding disaster and made a fateful decision. In the midst of the battle, Cleopatra's fleet suddenly broke away and retreated. Historians continue to debate the reasons for this maneuver, which has been interpreted as either a calculated attempt to preserve her forces or a panicked response to the deteriorating situation. Whatever her motives, the retreat left Antony's remaining forces demoralized and exposed, leading to their eventual rout. Antony, abandoning his men, followed Cleopatra in retreat, leaving Octavian's fleet to claim a decisive victory. The defeat at Actium was a catastrophic blow to Antony and Cleopatra's ambitions. Their forces were scattered, and their reputations were irreparably damaged. The battle also cemented Octavian's position as the dominant power in the Roman world. His victory allowed him to consolidate his authority and set the stage for his transformation into Augustus, the first Roman emperor. For Cleopatra and Antony, however, the aftermath of Actium was marked by despair and a desperate attempt to salvage their fortunes. After the battle, Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Alexandria, where they sought to regroup and fortify their position. Yet the momentum was against them. Octavian pursued them relentlessly, using his victory at Actium to bolster his political and military standing. Allies of Antony and Cleopatra defected to Octavian, further eroding their ability to mount a defense. The battle's psychological impact was as significant as its material consequences, leaving Antony and Cleopatra increasingly isolated and vulnerable. The significance of the Battle of Actium extended far beyond the immediate participants. It marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire under Octavian's rule. The battle also signaled the decline of Hellenistic Egypt as a significant power in the Mediterranean. Cleopatra, the last Ptolemaic ruler, symbolized the end of an era in which Egypt had been a center of political, cultural, and economic influence. For Cleopatra, the loss at Actium was both a personal and a political tragedy. Her vision of a powerful Eastern empire, ruled jointly with Antony and her children, crumbled in the face of Octavian's relentless ambition. Despite her efforts to protect Egypt and her dynasty, she could not overcome the combined forces of Roman propaganda, military superiority, and internal divisions. The battle marked the beginning of the end for her reign and set the stage for the dramatic events that would follow. The Battle of Actium remains one of the most studied engagements in ancient history, not only for its military significance, but also for its broader implications. It was a turning point that reshaped the Mediterranean world, marking the transition from the tumultuous politics of the late Republic to the relative stability of the Roman Empire. For Cleopatra, it was a moment of profound loss, but also a testament to her enduring role as a central figure in the struggles that defined her era. The fall of Alexandria in 30 BCE marked the tragic conclusion of Cleopatra's reign and the Ptolemaic dynasty. After their catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra and Mark Antony returned to Alexandria, their dreams of an Eastern empire shattered. With Octavian's forces closing in, the once powerful queen faced an inexorable decline, her final days marked by desperation, intrigue, and a steadfast determination to control her own destiny. Upon her return to Alexandria, Cleopatra worked to restore a semblance of stability to her kingdom. She fortified the city and consolidated her remaining forces, aware that Octavian's advance was inevitable. Her political acumen remained sharp, even in the face of impending doom. Cleopatra sought to negotiate with Octavian, sending envoys to gauge his intentions and potentially secure terms that would preserve her children's future. Her ultimate goal was to protect Egypt's sovereignty and ensure the survival of her dynasty. Mark Antony, by contrast, was a shadow of his former self. The humiliation at Actium had devastated his morale, and his once formidable resolve was replaced by a sense of fatalism. Antony's relationship with Cleopatra remained close, but the strain of their shared defeat took its toll. The couple's final months together were marked by alternating moments of hope and despair as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation with Octavian. Octavian's arrival in Egypt in the summer of 30 BCE signaled the final act of the drama. His forces quickly overwhelmed what remained of Antony and Cleopatra's military defenses. Antony attempted to rally his troops, but defections and low morale crippled his efforts. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, considered alternative plans, including an audacious idea to flee Egypt with her fleet and establish a new base of power elsewhere. However, these plans never materialized as Octavian's forces closed in on Alexandria. The final days of Antony and Cleopatra were marked by tragedy. After suffering another defeat, Antony received false news that Cleopatra had taken her own life. Overwhelmed by grief, Antony fell on his sword, choosing to die rather than face the humiliation of capture. Mortally wounded, he was brought to Cleopatra, where he died in her arms. Their final moments together were a poignant reminder of the intense bond they shared, despite the political and military failures that had defined their partnership. Cleopatra's own end was no less dramatic. Determined to avoid the fate of being paraded as a captive in Octavian's triumph in Rome, she took decisive action. Historical accounts differ on the details of her death, but the most enduring version suggests that Cleopatra used an asp, a venomous snake, to end her life. This method of suicide was not only a means of preserving her dignity, but also a symbolic act that underscored her association with Egyptian culture and divinity. By choosing death on her own terms, Cleopatra cemented her legacy as a ruler who would not be subjugated. Octavian's entry into Alexandria marked the official end of the Ptolemaic kingdom. Egypt was annexed as a Roman province, its vast wealth and strategic location enhancing Octavian's position as the unchallenged ruler of the Roman world. Cleopatra's children by Antony, Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene, and Ptolemy Philadelphus, were taken to Rome and paraded in Octavian's triumph, a grim reminder of the fallen dynasty. Caesar Ion, Cleopatra's son by Julius Caesar and her co-ruler, was executed by Octavian to eliminate any potential rival claims to power. The fall of Alexandria and Cleopatra's death marked the end of an era for Egypt. For nearly 3 centuries, the Ptolemaic dynasty had ruled as heirs to Alexander the Great's legacy, blending Hellenistic and Egyptian traditions. Cleopatra's death signified the final collapse of this unique cultural synthesis and the complete subjugation of Egypt to Roman rule. The loss of Egyptian independence was a profound moment in the history of the ancient world, as one of its oldest and most storied civilizations was absorbed into the Roman Empire. Cleopatra's final days have been the subject of enduring fascination, not only for their dramatic nature, but also for what they reveal about her character. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, Cleopatra remained a master of strategy, determined to shape her own fate. Her death was a deliberate act of defiance, a refusal to be reduced to a pawn in Octavian's triumph. This final act encapsulated the qualities that had defined her reign: intelligence, resilience, and an unyielding commitment to her vision of Egypt's sovereignty. The fall of Alexandria was not just the end of a kingdom, but the conclusion of Cleopatra's remarkable life. As the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, she had navigated a turbulent world with extraordinary skill, balancing alliances, wars, and cultural integration. Her death marked the end of Hellenistic Egypt and the beginning of Roman dominance in the Mediterranean. But her legacy as one of history's most iconic and complex figures endures. Cleopatra's final chapter is a testament to her enduring influence. While she could not save Egypt from Roman conquest, she left behind a legacy of resistance and ambition that continues to captivate the imagination. Her life and death symbolize the intersection of personal and political struggles, the clash of civilizations, and the indomitable spirit of a queen who refused to be forgotten. Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE marked the conclusion of one of the most dynamic and consequential lives in ancient history. Yet her story did not end with her passing. Her legacy has endured through centuries, continually reinterpreted and reimagined across cultures and eras. As both a historical figure and a cultural icon, Cleopatra has come to symbolize a range of qualities, from political acumen and personal resilience to allure and ambition. This chapter explores the multifaceted legacy of Cleopatra, examining her impact on history, art, literature, and modern perceptions of leadership and femininity. In the immediate aftermath of her death, Cleopatra's image was shaped by the political needs of Rome. Octavian, who became Augustus, the first Roman emperor, capitalized on Cleopatra's defeat to bolster his own legitimacy. Through propaganda, Cleopatra was depicted as a dangerous foreign queen who had seduced Roman leaders and threatened the stability of the Republic. This narrative served to glorify Octavian's victory and portray him as the savior of Rome. But it also distorted Cleopatra's true character and accomplishments. Despite the Roman propaganda, Cleopatra's reign left an indelible mark on Egypt and the Mediterranean world. As the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, she presided over a period of cultural and economic vitality, fostering the integration of Greek and Egyptian traditions. Cleopatra's fluency in multiple languages and her deep engagement with Egyptian religion and governance were unprecedented among her predecessors, highlighting her commitment to bridging cultural divides. Her ability to connect with her subjects on both a symbolic and practical level ensured that her memory endured in Egyptian lore. Cleopatra's influence extended beyond her lifetime, inspiring countless works of art, literature, and drama. In antiquity, she was a subject of fascination for Roman writers such as Plutarch and Dio Cassius, whose accounts formed the basis for many later interpretations. These depictions often blended historical fact with dramatic embellishment, emphasizing Cleopatra's relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony while minimizing her political achievements. This focus on her personal life over her strategic brilliance set a pattern that persisted for centuries. In the Renaissance, Cleopatra became a muse for European artists and playwrights. William Shakespeare's tragedy Antony and Cleopatra is one of the most famous literary works inspired by her life, portraying her as a complex figure of passion and power. Painters such as Guido Reni and Jean-Léon Gérôme captured Cleopatra's legendary beauty and dramatic death, reinforcing her status as an emblem of exoticism and intrigue. These portrayals often reflected the cultural values and anxieties of their time, illustrating how Cleopatra's image was continually reshaped to fit different narratives. Modern scholarship has sought to reclaim Cleopatra's legacy by emphasizing her political and intellectual achievements. Historians have highlighted her strategic alliances, administrative reforms, and patronage of science and the arts as evidence of her skill as a ruler. Cleopatra was not merely a figure defined by her relationships with powerful men. She was a shrewd leader who navigated a tumultuous geopolitical landscape with remarkable resilience. This reinterpretation has helped to shift the focus from Cleopatra as a romanticized figure to Cleopatra as a stateswoman and innovator. Cleopatra's story has also resonated in contemporary culture, where she has become a symbol of female empowerment and resistance. Her ability to wield power in a male-dominated world and her determination to control her own destiny have made her an enduring icon of strength and independence. Popular films, novels, and media have celebrated Cleopatra as a figure who defied convention and left an indelible mark on history, even as they often perpetuate myths about her life. In addition to her symbolic resonance, Cleopatra's legacy has prompted important discussions about how history is recorded and remembered. The Roman sources that dominate our understanding of her life were written by her enemies, raising questions about bias and historical accuracy. Modern historians and archaeologists continue to explore Cleopatra's reign, uncovering new evidence and reinterpreting old narratives to paint a fuller picture of her life and achievements. Cleopatra's enduring legacy is also evident in the continuing fascination with her personal identity. Her mixed ancestry, often debated by scholars, reflects the complex interplay of cultures in her time. The question of Cleopatra's ethnicity and appearance has fueled discussions about representation and historical interpretation, underscoring her relevance in debates about identity and diversity in the modern world. Ultimately, Cleopatra's legacy is one of complexity and contradiction. She was a ruler who defied categorization, embodying both tradition and innovation, strength and vulnerability. Her life and reign continue to captivate because they touch on universal themes: the pursuit of power, the complexities of love, the clash of cultures, and the resilience of the human spirit. Cleopatra remains a figure of timeless fascination, a testament to the enduring power of her story and the countless ways it continues to resonate across time and space. Cleopatra's legacy, while rooted in historical events, has often been shaped more by myth and fiction than by the historical record itself. From her early days as a co-ruler with her father to her dramatic death at the hands of an ASP, the story of Cleopatra has been reimagined countless times, each retelling reflecting the values, anxieties, and desires of the culture in which it was created. This chapter will examine how the myth of Cleopatra was constructed over time, analyzing the role of historical distortion, the power of storytelling, and the impact of her image on the collective imagination. The first seeds of myth surrounding Cleopatra were planted in the years immediately following her death, while Octavian, soon to be Augustus, and his supporters worked to discredit her in Rome, portraying her as a dangerous seductress who corrupted the noble Roman generals. They simultaneously created an enduring image of her as a woman of exceptional beauty and irresistible charm. This narrative emphasized her romantic relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, focusing on her role as a femme fatale who manipulated powerful men. This characterization played a pivotal role in constructing Cleopatra's myth in the Western world, overshadowing her political acumen and leadership qualities. The Roman accounts of Cleopatra's life were written by men who were, in many ways, politically invested in depicting her in a negative light. Writers such as Plutarch, Dio Cassius, and Appian, whose works have been the primary sources for much of what we know about Cleopatra, presented her through a Roman lens, framing her not as a leader, but as a foreign woman who used her sexuality to gain power. These portrayals, however, were not neutral accounts, but rather designed to serve the agendas of their Roman audiences. By focusing on Cleopatra's relationships with Caesar and Antony, these writers ensured that the myth of her seductive power would endure for centuries, while downplaying her accomplishments as a ruler. In the Renaissance, Cleopatra's myth evolved further. During this period, artists, playwrights, and poets reinterpreted her as a tragic heroine whose love affairs were central to her story. In Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, the queen is portrayed as a woman of intense passion, torn between love and duty. This depiction of Cleopatra as a tragic lover, rather than a calculating ruler, cemented her status as a figure of romantic allure. The focus on her emotional complexity, combined with the dramatic nature of her life, turned Cleopatra into an archetype of tragic femininity, a woman whose personal desires ultimately led to her downfall. Artistic representations of Cleopatra in the Renaissance and Baroque periods further romanticized her image. Paintings by artists such as Hans Mackart and Jean-Léon Gérôme depicted Cleopatra as an exotically beautiful woman, often naked or semi-naked, with an emphasis on her sensuality. These depictions reduced her to a mere object of beauty, sidelining her intellect, strategic mind, and political role. The recurring theme of Cleopatra's beauty, in particular, overshadowed her true accomplishments and reinforced the notion that she was primarily defined by her physical attractiveness. As European colonialism expanded in the 18th and 19th centuries, the myth of Cleopatra took on new layers. She became a symbol of the Orient, a mysterious, exotic, an often decadent world that fascinated and terrified Western audiences. Cleopatra's image as a powerful, seductive queen was reframed as a symbol of the supposed moral decay of the East, contrasting it with the perceived virtuousness of the West. This racialized and imperialist myth-making reduced Cleopatra to a symbol of an other world, further distancing her from her Egyptian roots and portraying her as part of a more universal narrative of power and allure. In the 20th century, Cleopatra was reborn through film, most notably in the 1963 Hollywood epic Cleopatra, starring Elizabeth Taylor. This portrayal, with Taylor's glamorous depiction of Cleopatra, cemented the queen as an icon of beauty, wealth, and grandeur, further reinforcing her image as a tragic figure trapped by her passions. Hollywood, like its predecessors, largely ignored her political achievements in favor of a spectacle-driven narrative. Yet in this version of Cleopatra, there was also a sense of empowerment. She was no longer just a passive figure, but a woman who actively fought for her kingdom and her legacy, albeit through romance and warfare. Modern portrayals of Cleopatra have continued to grapple with the tension between her real historical legacy and the myth that surrounds her. In contemporary depictions, there has been a concerted effort to humanize her, presenting her as a leader who used her intelligence, diplomacy, and charm to navigate the treacherous political landscape of her time. Historical fiction, documentaries, and scholarly works have worked to correct the earlier distortions, portraying Cleopatra not merely as a seductress, but as a competent, multilingual ruler who understood the complex dynamics of Roman politics and was capable of securing the survival of Egypt for as long as she did. Despite these attempts at a more balanced portrayal, the myth of Cleopatra persists. The image of her as an exotic, seductive queen remains pervasive in popular culture, where she is often depicted as a woman whose beauty and sensuality overshadow her accomplishments. Yet, this myth is increasingly being challenged by scholars and filmmakers who seek to present a more nuanced and multidimensional Cleopatra, one who was as much a political strategist as she was a lover or a beauty. This shift is not just about correcting historical inaccuracies, but also about reclaiming Cleopatra's legacy as one of the most significant female rulers in history. The persistence of the myth of Cleopatra speaks to the power of representation and the ways in which history is shaped by the stories we tell. Cleopatra's life, marked by triumphs and tragedies, has been reimagined through the centuries to reflect the values and anxieties of each era. The myth of Cleopatra, with its emphasis on beauty, seduction, and tragedy, continues to captivate the imagination, but it also serves as a reminder of how history can be distorted by the perspectives and priorities of those who tell it. As scholars and storytellers continue to examine Cleopatra's legacy, it becomes clear that the true story of this remarkable queen is far more complex and enduring than the myth that has surrounded her for millennia. Cleopatra, a figure whose legacy has transcended the boundaries of history, remains one of the most enduring symbols in the modern imagination. In contemporary discourse, she represents a complex intersection of power, femininity, and cultural identity. Through various lenses, historical, feminist, and post-colonial, Cleopatra's image continues to evolve, reflecting societal values, challenges, and aspirations. This final chapter explores Cleopatra's significance in the modern world, focusing on how she is interpreted today as a symbol of female empowerment, resistance, and the ongoing struggles for cultural representation and identity. In the 21st century, Cleopatra has become an icon of empowerment, particularly in feminist discourse. Her ability to wield power in a male-dominated world, her strategic use of her relationships, and her control over her own destiny make her a potent symbol for women who seek to challenge traditional gender roles. Cleopatra was not simply a passive figure defined by her relationships with men. She was a monarch who actively fought for her kingdom's survival against one of the most powerful empires in history. Feminists often look to Cleopatra as a role model who demonstrated intelligence, political savvy, and resilience. In this context, she is seen as a figure who defied the limitations imposed on women in her time and broke the mold of what it meant to be a queen. Cleopatra's portrayal as a powerful, strategic ruler has resonated with modern audiences who seek to reclaim the narratives of historical women. In many ways, her legacy is being redefined by contemporary scholars, filmmakers, and activists who emphasize her political acumen over the more conventional images of her as a seductress. Historical narratives that once emphasized her romantic entanglements with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony are increasingly being reinterpreted to highlight her diplomatic skills, her ability to maintain Egypt's independence for as long as she did, and her role in fostering a cultural renaissance in Alexandria. This reinterpretation of Cleopatra as a political figure rather than merely a woman of beauty or passion represents a broader shift in how women in history are viewed and portrayed. However, the tension between Cleopatra's true historical achievements and her mythic persona remains a central challenge in her modern image. While modern feminist narratives seek to reclaim her story, the myth of Cleopatra as an exotic seductress, often reduced to her physical appearance, still endures. Hollywood and popular culture continue to perpetuate this image, casting Cleopatra as a symbol of feminine beauty and sexual allure. Elizabeth Taylor's iconic portrayal of Cleopatra in the 1963 film, for example, reinforced the visual stereotype of the queen as a glamorous, almost unattainable figure. This portrayal, though visually stunning, reduced Cleopatra's character to a vehicle for spectacle rather than a woman whose intelligence and agency defined her reign. The tension between Cleopatra's portrayal as both a powerful queen and an object of desire also ties into larger discussions about the representation of women in media. Cleopatra's image is often sexualized and commodified, reinforcing the idea that a woman's worth is linked to her beauty and sexual appeal. This issue is particularly significant in the context of modern feminism, which seeks to challenge the objectification of women and promote a broader understanding of female agency and autonomy. The ongoing struggle to reclaim Cleopatra as a figure of substance rather than just surface beauty reflects the broader challenges women face in controlling their own narratives in a world that often reduces them to stereotypes. In addition to her significance in feminist thought, Cleopatra has also become a potent symbol of cultural identity, particularly in post-colonial discourse. As a woman of Greek and Egyptian descent, Cleopatra embodies the cultural fusion that characterized the Hellenistic world. Her mixed heritage is a reminder of the complexity of identity and the ways in which history often seeks to simplify or erase these complexities. Cleopatra's identity as both an Egyptian queen and a Greek descendant of Alexander the Great speaks to the fluidity of cultural boundaries, making her a symbol of both resistance to imperialism and the blending of cultures. This dual heritage makes Cleopatra a symbol for modern discussions of race, identity, and the impact of colonialism, as her image continues to be reinterpreted in the context of the ongoing struggle for racial and cultural representation. For many in the Arab and African worlds, Cleopatra is also a symbol of resistance to Western domination and a reclamation of history. In these regions, where colonial histories have often been written by outside forces, Cleopatra represents a powerful link to an ancient past that predated Western imperialism. Her legacy is re-examined through the lens of post-colonial identity, with an emphasis on her role as an Egyptian ruler rather than a figure of Roman propaganda. For these communities, Cleopatra is not simply a symbol of ancient Egypt, but a reminder of the rich, multifaceted history of the African continent, one that has often been distorted or minimized in Western narratives. Cleopatra's legacy also intersects with contemporary debates about the representation of historical figures in media and the arts. Her portrayal in film, television, and literature often reflects the cultural and political concerns of the time. As the debate over cultural appropriation and the authenticity of casting choices continues to grow, Cleopatra's image has become a focal point for discussions about who has the right to portray historical figures and what those portrayals mean. The debate over Cleopatra's ethnicity, for instance, has led to controversy over the casting of actresses in modern adaptations of her story. While Cleopatra's precise ethnicity is a matter of historical debate, the conversations around her portrayal raise important questions about representation and the ongoing impact of historical narratives on present-day identity. The persistence of Cleopatra's image in modern culture speaks to her enduring relevance and the ways in which her story continues to captivate the human imagination. From literature and art to politics and feminism, Cleopatra's legacy remains a touchstone for examining issues of power, gender, and identity. Her life and death, once seen as a tragic tale of love and loss, are now re-examined as a story of resilience, intelligence, and political savvy. Cleopatra's legacy, however contested or mythologized, serves as a reminder of the complexity of history and the power of representation. In conclusion, Cleopatra's place in the modern imagination is as complex and multifaceted as her life itself. As a symbol of empowerment, resistance, and cultural identity, she continues to inspire discussions about the role of women in power, the politics of race and representation, and the ways in which historical figures are shaped by the narratives constructed around them. Her enduring presence in both scholarly work and popular culture ensures that Cleopatra's legacy will continue to be reinterpreted and reimagined for generations to come. Through these ongoing examinations, Cleopatra remains not just a historical figure, but a living symbol of the complexities and contradictions of the human experience.